So, hey everyone, welcome to the fifth episode of Random Cloud Chats powered by Learn to Cloud. This time, Gwen is away, so I have a new guest on the show, and we'll be interviewing him about, how his career has been, what things he's interested in, and I think he have already given a hint. And we have Henok on the show. So, hey Henok, how are
Uh,
you?
Good. How's it going, Rishab?
Good, good. So yeah, I've seen you on Discord.
Yeah.
I've seen you on Discord. You have been quite active, I think, within the community, and I've also seen some of your LinkedIn stuff.
LinkedIn.
I
Oh,
don't.
interesting.
Yeah, I think you. I don't know if you're connected or not, but yeah, I'll make sure to add you to my connections.
Sure.
But yeah, I've think we have shared comments on YouTube or something too.
Yeah. I'm definitely active on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm lurking in the Discord group for sure, and
Hmm.
sometimes I
Hmm.
pop in and out. But yeah, LinkedIn. I'm not as much as active as other people are. So if there
Okay,
is
yeah, I
something shared, I'm
might
curious
have
what that was.
confused with YouTube then.
Okay.
But yeah, so I also know that you do YouTube too, right?
Yeah.
But you focus more towards sysadmin stuff, or is it
Yeah.
cloud?
No,
Okay,
I'm strictly sysadmin. I am a system administrator. So, but I'm strictly support like on-prem stuff. So, the traditional sysadmin, we're kind of a dying breed at
nice.
this point. So,
Are you already kind of trying to pivot to cloud or
yeah,
okay?
this is a part of being part of this community and kind of trying to contribute is
Mhm.
me getting into the cloud because at some point it's going to catch up to me where I become irrelevant. So, doing a lot of learning, a lot of trying to upskill myself. Yeah, and trying to make that transition at some point.
Nice. So how long have you been in the kind of tech world or tech industry?
Sure. Yeah. Total, including like internships. So I started in 2015.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So I have kind of like a unique transition because I started doing a co-op program my senior year of high school,
Hmm.
and I ended up kind of sticking with the same company through some of my college years, and then I eventually landed a full-time position there. Um, yeah, so I've been with the same company since 2015 until now.
That's okay. That's really interesting,
Yeah.
especially. So you mentioned you have been interning or at the company from your high school.
Yeah.
That did that like I heard it right?
Yep.
And then you also interned when you were in college.
Yeah. So what happened was my high school had like a vocational program, you can call it.
Okay.
So they kind of provided a lot of different experiences you could have and classes you could take surrounding. So I did an engineering track, but you could do like carpentry or bioengineering or other vocational, more like skills based kind of things. Um, so that at the end of that program, they allowed us to do a co-op our senior year. Um, so I got the opportunity to do a co-op within the IT team at Raytheon BBN here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Um,
Okay.
and that first year was kind of like just very minimal. There's a lot of learning and
Hmm.
there's a lot of inventory, a bit of like user support. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it, so I stayed on 2 more years as an intern. So I was on doing my undergrad. I stayed on for 2 years, and then they actually offered me a full time position. I think 2018. Um,
That is pretty interesting. I don't know if it's a common thing in the US where you can intern or they have programs where
yeah,
no, right?
no.
Because I've not heard that before. And I think
Yeah,
it's a really good like it gives you a kickstart to kind of see like how the industry looks like and like
yeah,
how it is to work in tech
yeah,
rather than just like assuming stuff while you graduate college.
yeah,
But yeah, that's really interesting. And then it's also I think like I guess you're happy with the progress you have made at that company. Because what's it's like 7 years now, right?
Yeah, it's
More
been
than
around.
7 years.
Yeah, more than 7 years. Like my internships were off and on. Like it wasn't full time,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
40 hours a week kind of thing. I think I've had sometimes that's part time, sometimes I was full time. So the first 2 years are kind of just generic, like learning experience, a typical internship experience, I would say. But I stayed on, and part of my experience was also both. I started out in a desktop support kind of role, but that team was kind of very much very close to the system administration team, the
Okay.
networking sysadmin system engineers. We kind of we there it's a weird organization in the sense that during that time, each department had its own like IT team. So we kind of
Mm.
dealt both with desktop support as well as system administration. So during my tenure there, for when I was doing my internship, I was very closely working with the sysadmins there. So I kind of got that hands-on role much earlier than other people would. Um,
Nice.
and so that's what helped me kind of transition into sysadmin role pretty quickly.
No, that's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um. So diving back.
sure.
So after your high school, you did a bachelor's degree, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I currently hold a bachelor's degree in information technology. It's just like a
Okay.
generic bachelor of arts. But
Mm.
because, so here's, every time I talk about my like work experience and education, it's kind of a whole story because, like I mentioned, I started interning
Yeah.
senior year of high school. And
Hmm.
I got my offer 2 years after that for a full time position. And so I hadn't finished college yet. um, yeah.
Yeah. Now that
So
I do the math, I'm like, okay.
yeah. So what happened was I've transferred a few times to different colleges. I started
Oh,
at
okay.
UMass Boston here in the Boston area, but eventually I finished at SNHU online. Um, and at the time when I got the full time offer, I had to make the choice whether I would take the offer and commit to a full time
Hmm.
position, which meant then I would need to figure out what to do with my school. I could either
Yeah.
stop, go part time, or do both full time, or I could not take that offer and finish my school and then try to get a full time position. It didn't make sense for me at the time not to take the offer. That was what I was working
Hmm.
for, right?
Hmm.
I think at the end of I mean, there's cases for both to be made, but for me, it made sense to take the offer and do school part time. So that's what I
Mm.
ended up doing. And I didn't finish actually until 2020. um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah,
Right before COVID.
right
I'm
before
hoping. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, literally right before everything shut down. Um,
Hmm.
as is when I finished. So, but yeah, I do hold a degree though.
Interesting. Yeah. I just keep wondering, how different the journey can be for everyone. So
Yeah,
like, how non-traditional your path looks.
right.
But yeah, that's great. You're doing great.
Thanks.
And so when you made that decision to sign that offer letter,
Hmm.
after that, you said you did took the like your education as part time, right?
Hmm.
Was that online or was that still you had to go into the classes, physically?
Yeah, so it was both. So I mentioned that I had transferred in and out of different places.
Hmm.
So initially, my I was going to try to do in person. Um,
Okay.
I figured it was part time, and I could make it work with full time work. Turned out that was a bad decision. It was very stressful because I had to like once I signed that offer, kind of I had like some responsibility within work
Yeah.
to be there and to do my job. So and at the time, like we didn't our remote working thing wasn't like as flexible as most
Mm.
tech companies are now. So kind of a 9 to 5 was like what was expected. I'm sure if I had, thought about it more and kind of talked with my manager at the time, it would have worked out. Um,
For
but it
sure, yeah.
didn't. Yeah. But it didn't, and it was kind of stressful. So well, I did go online, and I ended up going to SNHU, and they have also a different weird term based education rather than a semester based education.
Oh, I see.
But it was online, so I can, and that was much better to kind of balance those two between full
Mm-hmm.
time work and school. Um, yeah, and that's how I approached it at least.
No, for sure. Um, were you always interested in, IT or computers or tech, like when you were younger, or is that something that, grew on you when you were like in your teens?
Yeah, it's a lot more later for me. I think
Mm.
traditionally you hear about people like learning about computers when they were kids, and
Yeah.
so actually I was born in Ethiopia, so I wasn't born in the United States, and I didn't see or like have ownership of computers maybe definitely past like age 10. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't grow up on computers. I mean, obviously back home, like we had computers at school, but
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
my household didn't have a personal computer at least. So I didn't even have the chance to be interested in them, right? I think a lot of my perception about computer was kind of that it's unreachable. It's like somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? Like people in the U.S. have it, blah blah blah. Then I had the opportunity to come to the United States, and I think my whole education kind of changed.
Mm.
Obviously, my first priority was to learn English, kind of similarly to the culture, kind of stuff like that. So, tech was still not in my radar, but because I think in Ethiopia, the like math and science education, either it was more rigorous or maybe I had more interest into it, but that's what came easy for me,
For
um, rather than like other humanities or those kinds of topics.
makes sense.
Yeah, so that I think I was drawn to the math and science. So in my high school years, I kind of geared or tended to lean towards like engineering kind of roles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hence why I took that vocational program, and it was through that program that I was kind of introduced to computers and IT, as far at least to the level of like in depth, like building computers, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. But yeah, I would say my interest into it was much later than a lot of people out here.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of share like, the same things. I guess we could call it, third world
Sure. Yeah.
problems. Yeah, because, I didn't see a computer, I think. I can remember grade. I think it was grade 8 or grade 9. I don't know how old I was. Maybe,
Okay.
yeah, 13 ish. Um,
Oh, okay.
that's
Yeah.
when we had like, our first, like personal computer at our home.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as you said, like we used to like have computers at school, and that's where we learned most of it. Um, but really similar to that, I also like had high interest in math and science,
Mm.
and I think that's why like that's how I got into computers.
Yeah.
I was not like one where you were at 15 when you were coding kind of
Yeah.
kid. I was just I had a computer when I was 15, but it was only used for gaming.
Mm.
Um, and that's it. No, that's good to know. But yeah,
Uh,
I love that how your high school had that program. So I guess that kind of answers. I had a question for you, like how you got into tech, like what was your first job and like how you landed it.
yeah.
But I think we have already kind of talked about it,
Yeah.
through your internship when you were in high school, which is still really impressive to me. And then kind of landed a full time role before graduating.
Yeah.
So I guess there was already a path kind of that you set up for yourself,
Yeah.
and I think that's great. And we have also talked about your education. So you have a bachelor's degree, not in computer science; it's in IT,
Mm-hmm.
which I think uh, is kind of non-traditional because I've talked to various people either, especially in the US and I think on the western side of the world, people tend to not have degrees and like have made a successful career, whereas I think Like in India, it's highly required for you to have a degree. I think it's changing now, but still, like there's a lot of demand of having professional education before you can land a job.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
I mean,
think that's
I think here there's still pockets of like the tech industry that kind of requires
yes.
um, a bachelor's degree, and even my company, I think, when I was offered the position,
Hmm.
I was not like I if I had a degree, I would have been in a different grade or group
I see.
for the position that I got, um, and that's because like within like the HR corporate world,
Yeah.
they do still kind of require for you to have a degree. But I agree, it's a lot more relaxed now, and as long
Hmm.
as you kind of can prove that you have that knowledge and skill, then you have a pathway to get into tech.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also like I've experienced if you had a degree, you would be in a different pay group.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah, even if the role is same,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is kind of interesting, but I guess it makes sense because you know how the like how expensive the schools are here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
But also
um,
I think in it might, yeah, it might feel a little hard or harsh on the person that does the same job, but like if you look
mhm,
at it from a perspective of somebody that does have a degree that like kind of worked hard to get there, then you might be like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But also from an HR or company perspective, it's kind of hard to, you have to have some kind of guideline as far as like how you
yeah,
pay people, right? And degree makes it easier. Also certifications makes it easier.
mhm,
Um, Arbitrary trying to like, yeah, gauge how much to pay somebody based on what they're doing is
yeah.
it's a hard job, and
It's
yeah,
a
I
hard,
envy
yeah,
people that
yeah.
do that. So.
Yeah, it's hard to even like yeah, I cannot evaluate on if I was given the job to be like, hey, evaluate this.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Fair, yeah, yeah.
um, cool, cool. So I know you're part of the LTC community, and
Hmm.
by LTC I mean Learn to Cloud. So I guess you're trying to transition into cloud, and
Hmm.
like what is your kind of strategy because you already are a sysadmin, and like what are the couple of things that you're focusing your time and your energy on right now to make that transition, because I think that'll you know clarify a few things for others who are trying to do the same.
Yeah. So the way I'm approaching it at the moment is kind of, well, first I think it's a mindset shift because
Hmm.
like the tendency, I well, at least the beginning when I was starting, I have like the kind of the tendency to look at job postings and be like, oh, like I'm never gonna get there, or like look at all the requirements and be like, I have to learn now. I have to learn like programming, as well as a new technology as far as the different cloud providers, blah blah blah. So it's first off kind of setting up my mindset that it's kind of a journey, right? Not like something I could just take a course on and kind of land a position. I might get lucky
Hmm.
that way, but that would be it would not be a fun ride to land a position like that. Um, so I think that took a while to kind of have that kind of mindset. But after that, it's kind of really following the LTC phases, right? Um, so I looked through the LTC phase as well as like other suggestions for from YouTubers, blogs, and all that jazz. Luckily for me, because I do come from a sysadmin background, I can kind of skip the learning the fundamentals of like Linux,
Hmm.
OS, and my networking isn't great, but I can get by, right? Or I can quickly review that kind of skill.
Yeah.
Um, right now, what I'm focused on is learning the different cloud providers
Hmm.
and building projects around them. So I'm currently tackling actually the Cloud Resume Challenge, um,
Nice.
and I've chosen Azure as my like go-to cloud provider.
Hmm.
For a while, I was going for AWS because I know they have a bigger market share. Um, but I figured I would stick to Azure because it's pretty um, like I've been in the Windows world at my
Yeah, I
workplace.
see. Hmm.
Majority of my work is in Linux, but I deal with some Windows servers, so some of the language is still pretty similar. There's like an Azure AD, and there's like Active Directory still on the on-prem world,
Hmm.
so things like that. So I figured that language will be much closer to home for me,
Yeah.
and I wanted to choose one to kind of focus on, as to not like get distracted.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
one of the big, like, my worst downfall is kind of starting to learn something and then something else comes up and then I go down this rabbit hole, and
Hmm.
then next thing I know I'm like in 10 different rabbit holes and I haven't learned anything. So I'm telling myself to stick to Azure. So I've already started the Cloud Resume Challenge, and I have my resume up like on Azure. Um,
Nice.
so like I'm going through the different sections. So that's, yeah. So my priority right now is just kind of learning the platform, and then trying to build projects and gain some of the skills, to hopefully eventually get into that kind of world. Um,
Nice. No, that's. I think that's good. It's a good path, and yeah,
yeah,
I totally agree. Especially with, tech, it can be overwhelming, like you said,
yeah,
because there's every week there is something new,
yeah,
and especially if you're like really active on Twitter, there's all this hype that comes with new tech,
right,
and then you're like, oh, maybe I should look into this, and then you are down the rabbit hole of learning it and trying
right,
to build something with that technology.
yeah,
I think it was easier. I won't say easier, but it was less hassle for me because I was completely not on social media when I started learning cloud.
mm,
So for me, it was just my seniors or the cloud team that I had at my workplace that were guiding me. Okay, this is what you should do. This is the course you should take, and I was just like, okay. So not no distractions. And I
sure,
think that's what made like the process easier and also like faster
yeah,
for me to transition from help desk to cloud. But
so,
I
mm,
guess for you, yeah, it makes sense. Where, like you already said, you're already in the Windows world.
mm,
Um, you know, you have been doing some stuff with the AD, so it makes sense for you to stick with Azure.
yeah.
Um,
I'm curious. So did you go from a help desk position to a cloud engineer position?
mhm.
And was it through like the same company?
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you approached, like, what was your kind of thinking around when you were in a help desk position, um, how you kind of approach gaining the skills, to get to the cloud engineer position.
Yeah. So for me, it was totally. So I was upfront with the cloud team. I'm like, okay, whatever you're doing, I love this.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do this because I was at a point where I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do like support for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pivot to something more meaningful or something more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like few escalations that I was working on where I need assistance from the cloud team because all of the data that we got from our clients that was at the back end it was all AWS.
Okay.
So if we could not resolve the issue on kind of the things that we had access to, tools that we had access to, we had to go to the cloud team because they could only access AWS instances or
Mm.
databases and stuff like that. And then so on few of those escalations I like started seeing, then I'm like, what is this? They're like, oh, instead of having a traditional data center, we have everything hosted in cloud, and this is Amazon's cloud. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I started looking into more, and then I just asked them if I can be on team meetings and shadow them.
Mm.
I think they were super supportive about it. They're like, okay, yeah, sure. And you can see like how it is working in cloud,
Yeah.
and I loved it. And then I asked them like, give me like a kind of skills or things that I need to learn in order
Mm-hmm.
to get where you are at or like be part of this team.
Yeah.
So I think they suggested like get a certification or two because I had zero experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that would just help me you know ramp up my AWS skills because you need to know the platform.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started doing. I think I chose cloud practitioner because it was a foundational one, and then started learning it. I think it took me 3 months because I was like super new. I didn't know any services or like even the cloud computing concepts. I didn't know load balancing. So all of that stuff I had to either learn it through the course that they bought me, or ask them about, hey, this was not clear so much in the course, could you explain it and how do we implement it. And I think you need that kind of support because I didn't have any other peers outside my work, or I was, as I said, not on any social media, was not active. Didn't know there are communities that existed. But yeah, I think so learning a cloud platform to getting a certificate, and then I did ask them, I'm like, should I go for a solutions architect? They're like, you probably would need a lot more time to go for a solutions architect. They suggested for me to build projects instead, so that I'm hands-on, and that's what I did. Is I built a really similar to what Cloud Resume Challenge is, but it was just my portfolio with various different like AWS services that were being used. And then I had like kind of two designs for the same project. So both of them were deployed, but one had its own features and stuff. The other one was more traditional, and that was it. And then luckily for me, there was an opening within like 5-6 months
within the company.
Sure. And I asked the cloud team itself and then others who were helping me with this transition that should I apply for it, and they were like, sure, but we'll still have external applicants, and we would see like how you kind of evaluate you against them and see.
Sure.
But I think the only thing that helped me was the project, because I remember we talked about like 20-30 minutes just about that project, and I had it like well documented on GitHub. I had architecture diagrams and stuff. So
you mean like what helped you in the interview was the project that you had?
Yeah, because other than that, I just had cloud practitioner on my resume, and everything else was help desk related.
No, I mean that's good though, because I think a lot of people, including me, don't have a gauge for, like, when you asked them whether you should go for a cloud or a solutions architect, they were kind of like, no, hold on, calm down, right? Like, build some skills before you can get there. And I think I've seen a lot of people want to get into system administration, but I think it's not clear that transition is like pretty difficult to make, right? It's a complicated position. Like, you have to know a lot of things, not to discourage a lot of it, right? Like there's like a set pathway you can take to kind of get there, and it's a lot of building skills and a lot of building projects like you did. But yeah, I kind of, when people ask those questions, I'm like, oh, okay, so what have you been doing to kind of solidify your skills and get those skills? And a lot of the time it's crickets. Sorry, hold on, I think my thing went black again. Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. I think actually the thing is timing out and it goes black. But yeah, so I see a lot of people ask those questions, but when you ask them what they've been doing, it's a lot of cricket. So I love that their first suggestions was for you to build projects, and it actually, like, it helped you in the interview. It's not like some random suggestion they had out of nowhere, right?
No, yeah. And I think so the advantage for me was that I was internal applicant, and then also the project, of course, kind of solidified, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. But also I kind of knew like how we utilized AWS on like the backend stuff.
Sure.
So like, from if we get a data set from the client from point A, I could tell you what was the journey of that data inside AWS on
Okay.
our end. So I think that gave me an edge over, any of the external applicants because they would not know that.
Sure. Because it
Um,
would take them to time to
yeah,
ramp up, and whereas you
exactly.
already have like fair. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that came from shadowing the cloud team
Mm.
during all these months that I was doing that for. But yeah, I think that was kind of my strategy. I knew that it would be really time consuming and would take a lot more effort to quit my help desk job and then
Mm-hmm.
look for opportunities outside.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I could see that we already had a cloud team; they're really supportive. They also have an opening, so it was worth a shot. And yeah, here we are.
Um, okay, cool. Um, I am also curious. I don't know if you had other questions, but I am kind of curious why you decided to start documenting things.
That's a good question. So I think um, during all of this process when I transitioned and I landed the role finally, um, 6 7 months in, I was like completely kind of onboarded and knew what I was doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if so, part of the job was to be on call,
Mm-hmm.
1 week in a month, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And then I think I got my first kind of alert at 2 a.m. and I knew what I was doing. So that was the that moment when I realized, okay, I am a cloud engineer now. Like I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Um, I know how to troubleshoot. I know where to look at. I
Mm.
know how the systems work from as I said, point A to point B. And then I wanted to excel more. I think like maybe get a promotion or where should I go next from cloud,
Mm.
because after a certain time your job is repetitive, like it's same old. And that's when I met a senior software developer in our team who was building a lot of IC stuff
Okay.
for CloudFormation. So CloudFormation is the IC tool for AWS.
Okay.
um, and and I looked at one of the files he just like pushed to the repository, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like all of these resources can be deployed to AWS just
From
by
a
using
file.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, by a file,
Yeah.
which I have been doing manually for the
Mhm.
last 8 9 months.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And so I built up the courage and talked to him. I'm like,
Yeah. Mm.
I need to learn from you. He's like, yeah, I'm working on this really cool thing, and it'll bring down a lot of the effort that the cloud team puts in to deploy our app or the web app.
Mm-hmm.
Will take that away. I'm like, yeah, that's why I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
And I saw that so there was troubleshooting involved because this was a really good, like really new project. And I saw him going to his own blog site to like that he wrote, I think, a year ago or something,
Okay.
to figure out something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he knew he did that, but in the past. I'm like, oh, you have a personal blog. And I'm like, so I was amazed
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
didn't know, I only thought that tech companies have blogs. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
know
Right.
personal beings can have blogs.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, he has been blogging, I don't know for how many years, but he was not so active anymore.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay. And then I looked at his blog and was just mesmerizing it. I'm like, this is amazing. Like all of this years of work is available
Right.
on publicly on this site. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you should do it too. And I'm like, okay. He's like, yeah. Even if there are topics that already exist, like just write it down because your version is gonna be different. Your learning
Mm.
method is different. The way you perceive things is gonna be different. And I'm like, okay. So I started with one blog, and then I'm like, okay, this is, really, like, it was empowering too, because, writing is one of those things where I think I'm really deeply focused,
Sure.
and I can get, a bit creative too.
Yeah.
And I felt like I've achieved something after finishing a blog
Right.
post.
Right.
So that's why I started doing it. And then I got into the habit of, writing every week. Whatever I was doing, if I learned something, if I was building something, could be a small. I remember I did a small hack of, so I had to Google this, but you have SQL Studio,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the dark theme is not available if you click on the drop down, and
Okay.
I'm always a dark theme lover,
Sure.
um, and I'm like, I saw this on someone's computer with dark theme. There's got to be a way to, have the dark theme on this.
Yeah.
And I figured it out. I wrote a blog post. To this point, whenever I get a new machine, I need to install SQL Studio. I have to go back to my blog post
To your
and
own
see how
blog.
it did. Yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, that's what I I can think of. That's what kind of inspired me to do it.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing, the positive side of sharing my learnings. Is I was helping the community. It was just not me taking my personal stuff, like personal notes or for myself. I could see already other people that were being helped by it. So I think that's when I started actively participating on Twitter or Discord. And yeah, I think that's what got it started. And then for the YouTube side of things, it's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think I love hearing, because it's not an easy thing to kind of like, you need to like understand the concept and write it down in a way like it's presentable for other people, and you're sharing like part of yourself out to the world,
Definitely.
which I think is like, there's a barrier there that you kind of have to overcome. So it's really cool to hear how you got to that point.
Yeah, I think I did feel intimidated in the beginning, because I was like, what if I sound like a dumb person, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, I understand it now, but for me it was like, there are thousands of smart people in this world,
Right.
and what if they go over my blog post and be like, oh, this guy's dumb, like,
Yeah.
what is he writing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's always there back of my mind. But yeah, it takes a bit of courage to put yourself out. But I've always had that imposter feeling, and I think the only way to not overcome it is just do it anyways.
Yeah.
Like, if I can help one person with my article, I'm happy. I'm more than
Yeah.
happy. That's it.
And I think it doesn't take a lot to help somebody. Like your like worst job at a blog or a video could help like that one person that's stuck with something, or that's looking,
definitely.
or even just like they could kind of relate to you, and that's a
Mhm.
different kind of support or help than
Yeah.
the actual technical stuff. But yeah, I think yeah, similar case for me as far as, I started with YouTube first. And I haven't, I've written one blog, and I plan to write more. But YouTube, I think for me, I've always liked YouTube. Like that's what I watch most of the time, anyways. As opposed to like Netflix or other things. And I have gravitated to like the storytelling side of YouTube. A lot of like vloggers. I don't know if you follow like Peter McKinnon, like Casey Neistat, those people. Yes Theory. Amazing storytelling, and those always blow me away. So when I was kind of in the tech world, I felt like I was really far away from that side of things. And I've grown up. I'm not like I haven't grown up like creative. Like I was never like an artist or whatever, but I did find myself in high school taking, whenever I had electives or whatever, I took music classes. I don't think I've ever taken art classes. A lot of music classes, and I've loved learning skills and stuff like that. so it was always in the back of my head for like quite a while that like, you know, I should do something for YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea like what I was gonna do. I kind of just thought about it, and eventually like I also the other I kind of got stuck in my tech world as well, because I think similar to you, I kind of transitioned into like got that full-time position. It was majority of it was like user support. Eventually transitioned into like a strictly sysadmin role, and kind of got stuck there. Not that there wasn't like things to do or like skills to progress into. There was a lot,
Yeah.
but for some reason there was just part of me that got stuck. So I was trying to like unstuck myself for quite a bit, and kind of had this idea, probably suggested through like YouTube videos that I watched, because the algorithm probably figured out that I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of had the idea to start documenting some of the stuff that I'm learning, and as well as like explore this creative side of me. And that's when I decided to kind of join those two together. So a lot of the content that I make is trying to teach somebody tech, or trying to help somebody get into the tech career. And I try to have some kind of storytelling aspect to it, even if it's like
Nice.
a tutorial thing. And it's not great. Like if I look at my videos and then I go back and look at other people's video, I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. But I think just being in that kind of mentality has kind of like immensely progressed the way I think about my career, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of opened up so many other things. Even just being on this call right now, right? Like I would not be on this call if I didn't do any of those things. I could still be in the LTC community, but I definitely wouldn't be behind this camera. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, definitely. And the same goes for me. Like if I hadn't done it, like we both of us wouldn't be on
Right.
this call. Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting to see that you started straight with YouTube, because for me, as I said, like I don't know, it could be upbringing, it could be, what my thought process has been through the early years of my life, but I
Mm.
think a lot when it comes to sharing stuff publicly. Putting myself on camera was the last thing I would have done.
Yeah.
um and that's why I think, yeah, blogs were great to start, and I think that's why I stuck with that for like a year and a half.
Mm.
I just did tweets and stuff, never posted. You can see like there's no picture of me until like late 2021.
Okay.
And I think the YouTube side of things, so I was talking to my manager, and this is when I got from like cloud. I worked in cloud for 2 years, or cloud engineer, as a cloud engineer for 2 years, and then switched to DevOps. And so I was talking to my manager, I'm like, okay, I have technical skills. The
Mm.
only thing I was bad at is, my public speaking skills.
Mm.
So I would be, given an opportunity to present a project in a team meeting, not a huge audience, like 7 to 8 members, or, 12 members. And
Yeah.
I would decline that right away. And I'm like, I'm not presenting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, give me a tip to, improve this. It's like, start a YouTube channel. I'm like, okay. It's like, it doesn't have to be, YouTube. You could just record yourself and like, start practicing, like yourself facing the camera, and see like look at your videos and see what part do you not like and what part you like.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, this is not the worst idea. And so I started with the AWS, I think, tutorial kind of demo,
Sure.
where I'm logging into, the console and create a VM instance. And I don't know what I did, but it's still on my YouTube.
Yeah.
But I didn't publish that for a month. Like it was still, a private, and I sent it to my manager. He's like, yeah, so, you could improve on this. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay. And that's when I'm like, I'll just make this public, because that way I'm accountable.
Mm.
That's what I found with my blogs is, because I posted them publicly, I was like, okay, I need to, like write another post next week, because otherwise people would be thinking that I'm away, right?
Yeah. Can't leave them hanging.
Yeah. And especially after I did the 100 days of cloud challenge, because
Mhm.
I tweeted every day and like, okay, this is what I learned today. And I think consistency, plays um, huge. It has a huge impact,
Yeah.
especially with YouTube too. I'm seeing it now that once I was consistent with my uploads, it's game changing. The algorithm picks up, and you can already see the growth. So yeah, for me, it was my manager, and then my discussions with him kind of wanted me to start a YouTube channel. I started it, and then I already had like 36 blog posts at that point.
Mm.
So whenever I ran out of ideas of what I should do, I just
Yeah.
picked a blog post, created a video on it, and then uploaded it. But yeah, that's my story on how I started YouTube. But yeah, I'm really impressed that it takes courage. I would be honest with you, it takes
Yeah.
courage to face the camera and like start speaking, and that on top of that you're doing technical content. It's hard to put yourself out there and
Yeah. 100%.
explain stuff.
Kind of going back to progressing like in skills and getting certifications, all that stuff you talked
Mm-hmm.
about earlier. I'm curious how you approach whenever you get like stuck in something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've maybe you're super smart and just progress through things like really
No.
really fast. But I'm curious, like especially when you're learning the cloud and you're working on these projects, I'm sure you've run into a lot of roadblocks and maybe I tend to have the mentality of like, oh no, like I still don't know anything, like, and kind of get in this like depressive almost state about the
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? Not about myself. So I'm curious how you kind of try to go past that, um, and then move forward.
Yeah, so I think especially with roadblocks, I tend to now I think I'm better at expressing myself.
Mm,
Even if I'm stuck, I reach out.
mm,
If it's something that I cannot reach out to the public, I reach out to whoever is close to me.
okay.
So especially with technical stuff, it could be career related, it could be project related.
Yeah.
I'll reach out, see how they think about it, or oftentimes I find help and I get it resolved or past it.
Mm,
um when I was trying to transition from, I think not transition, but I was learning about DevOps,
mm-hmm.
and that transition from cloud to DevOps, think I utilized Twitter a lot. So I would reach out to whoever. I would just post it on my feed, and there was
Sure.
always someone who would be like, "Oh, this is what's happening, and this is what you need to do," kind of situation.
Okay.
And I also kind of reminded myself that I'm still in learning phase, even though I might be a cloud engineer, but I've only been there for like a year or two.
Yeah.
So I'm still no expert, even though I hold that title.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like had to explain it to myself that there's no shame in asking or reaching out to people or peers. And yeah, I think that's how. I don't know if it answers your question, but yeah, that's how I kind of approached it.
No, yeah, it does. I think I was kind of curious about like like the state of your mind and mentality towards approaching it. But I mean, I also, yeah, I think my first inclination is not like it's not to reach out to somebody, which I think is what I should do, right? And I rarely post on Twitter. Is the other thing I should start doing. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't
more
have to be like Twitter. For me, it was my go-to. It can
yeah.
be like, it could be Discord, it could be
Mm,
WhatsApp, wherever you have peers or mentors or community that can help in the situation. And I agree, there's always that thought in the mind, okay, how they say, like, fake it till you make it, or
right.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm like, okay, no, I'm not faking this.
Yeah.
I do need to learn like how I have to whatever situation I'm dealing with. And in order to learn it, I need to understand like what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had to be honest, I had to keep my ego aside
Yeah.
and be like, okay, I get it, I'm a cloud engineer, but I don't know how this works.
Hmm.
So, like, okay, I'll reach out and ask for a hand.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it when it comes to, me asking you questions about um, how your career has been. And I'm glad, how it has been going so far. And it's good to see that you're trying to, make that transition. Um, and you're already part of LTC. And if you have any suggestions on how we can improve the community aspect of it, or the guide itself, like
Sure.
feel free. You're already active on Discord, or you could reach out to us personally. But I wanted to know about one thing that you think is you find it amazing to be working in tech.
Ooh, that's a good question. One thing that I find amazing about working in tech,
Hmm.
um, okay, I, th- I mean, I'm gonna go for a cliche answer, and it's the fact that from from your computer or from your bedroom, right? You can write a text file
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and provide a value to somebody across the world that you have never met or don't know or have no idea about. Um, I think that's insane.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that answer.
yeah, I mean, tech in general is insane, right? Like even the fact
Yeah.
that technology and like how communication happens, right? It's still
Hmm.
like I know a lot of it is abstracted, especially in the cloud world, but it's still a bunch of like electrical signals that
Yeah.
go across different and like just the sheer speed of how things happen um,
Hmm.
is insane. I think that's my
Definitely.
answer. What about you?
Uh, you already like your answer is really good. I cannot
I
match
topped.
that. I cannot. Yeah, I cannot top it. Yeah. I don't know.
Not what about the tech memes? Okay, I think the second thing is like tech memes.
Yeah. Tech memes are good. Um, I think money is good.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think money is really good. Like if you're looking, especially with like how things are moving.
Yeah,
You don't need a degree now.
yeah. Well, okay. Here's
To
here's a question for you. Um, Passion over money, right? Let's in tech especially. Like if you're not about passionate about tech, let's say, but you can like bear with
Mhm.
it, would you still approach a tech career?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
think it depends, and I think it depends on your experiences, your beliefs
Yeah.
in life, like how you have been in the past,
Yeah.
and like I knew, I'm sure you know the story of me working at gas stations and delivering pizza. So for me, if it's always if it comes down to being a bit of stressful, like a bit stressful, and still having good salary working in tech, I'm fine with dealing with that, and I'm
Sure.
have zero passion about it. I'm fine.
No, I okay. One of my pet
I'll
peeves.
treat it
Go
as
for it.
work. But I think over time it might change.
Sure.
Like I recently had the experience where I had to leave Google because I was not happy, and the thing that comes with the privilege of
Mm,
me having other opportunities, and having good experience that would land me some other opportunity.
yeah.
I think that comes with some privilege. If I had no options, I think I would have been working there until I found something
Mm,
which I want to do. So it depends. It's a good question, but I think it depends person to person.
yeah.
But
I,
yeah,
I I was
for
just
me, I think
curious
great
because
thing.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because I think one of the most common um what's it called, like
Yeah, yeah,
career advice is to like kind of follow your passion, and like if you're
yeah.
not passionate about it, it's over for you, or like it's don't even go for it. And I'm like, I don't know if I like subscribe to that kind of thought, right? um
Yeah.
like yes, I get it, like, you know, you want to be you want to have your mental health in check. You want to try to reach like happiness and all that stuff, but I think a lot of people um are just trying to like kind of survive and make a means, just live,
Yeah,
maybe
definitely. Yeah.
above their means,
Um,
or at their means. um
yeah, and I think if it's your passion to work in tech and you're working it, like
yeah,
that's awesome. Like, it's
yeah,
you're
fair.
yeah. But yeah, I have it the other way around. I'm passionate about tech, but
Sure,
if
yeah.
it ever like I ever outgrow it and I don't like working in it, but
Mm.
it still brings good money, I can support my family, and I'll keep working.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's worst thing about working in tech?
What's the worst thing about working in tech? Oof. um Sorry, I think there's some background noise. Sorry about that.
No
um
worries.
the worst thing about tech, I think it's just either like how fast it moves, or just the amount of options there are like
Mm,
within tech, right? Like specifically like when you're trying to learn stuff, it can kind
yeah.
of be very challenging, um, figuring out what to choose next or what to learn next, right? Sometimes it's very clear if you're already in a position in tech,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
your company like chooses a stack or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
when you're coming from
It helps with that decision making. Yeah.
yeah, but when you're like coming into it with no knowledge or trying to figure out things out, there's
It's
so
overwhelming.
much, and it could get
Yeah.
overwhelming. And it does Twitter and other sources don't
Hmm.
help at all. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
No.
my
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I think it adds up, especially because it changes so rapidly.
mm,
Um, the more like if I think it's a lot harder now to get into. Let's say if I had to get into cloud now, it would be a lot harder because I did it 4 years ago when there were less options,
yeah, exactly,
and
yeah,
majority of the decisions were made, by my employer that okay, we use AWS, so that's what you're
right.
gonna learn, right? So I think yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think those were some good questions, but I need to know your personal preferences now.
Okay.
So, are you a PC guy or a laptop guy,
Oh,
or both?
oh,
It
that's
can be both.
okay. I'm gonna take the easy out and
Okay,
say
okay.
both. Um, I think like I would lean towards a PC,
Hmm.
but like you can't beat just the convenience of a laptop, I feel like.
Yeah,
Um,
I always lean like I have a PC for like personal use, and I don't have any laptops right now.
yeah.
But I'm always, whenever I travel, I'm like, I should buy one.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like yeah, I think if you forced me to choose one for the rest of my life, it'd be a laptop. Just
Mm.
because I can take it around. I like love working in like coffee shops and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
And that like having a PC would just eliminate that.
yeah. Hmm. And Windows, Mac, or a Linux person. And this is for personal preference.
I think Windows, just because I familiar with it, and I can always augment other things, right? Like Linux,
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
WSL for Linux.
Yeah.
Um, I guess not really much for Mac. But I do have, so I have all. So I primarily work with Linux at work.
Okay.
My personal PCs are Windows, and my work laptop is a Mac. So yeah,
Okay.
no. So I do all three, but I think if I had to choose one, probably Windows.
Cool. And last,
Okay.
what is your favorite programming language? Could
Ooh.
be, system admin related too.
Okay. Because yeah, I don't. I don't
Mm-hmm.
program a lot. I am learning Python right now, and then I do
Okay.
enjoy it because it's kind of easier to learn. Um, yeah, let's just go with Python. Python,
Okay.
Python is my go-to answer. Yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think there's it's easier to the learning curve I believe is um less steep, and
yeah,
then
100%.
you have like great community, like it's very well documented language.
Yeah,
You have huge support for it, and then I think there are I can't like there are plenty of resources available. Whether
yeah,
you are a video person, you're a docs person, you're a book person. But yeah, I
and as a sysadmin, also like I can
yes.
easily use it like right away.
Hmm.
Like at work, well, Bash is really what I've used to like script something. But a lot of our things are automated through configuration management tools as well, like Puppet and Ansible.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't usually like go out of my way to like code something in Python. But if I wanted to script something or automate something, Python
It
would
would
just
be
be
yeah.
like a really easy thing to do. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
fine.
cool. Yeah, that's what I used to do. Is it's I think there was something I wanted to automate, and I'm like, okay, I'll just pick Python, and that was the end of the decision that I had to make
Yeah,
2 years
exactly.
ago, which language to pick.
Fair.
But yeah, no, cool. So yeah, that's all I had for the questions. I don't know if you have any interesting questions.
No, I think I was able to manage to ask them throughout the conversation. So
Awesome,
yeah, that's all.
awesome. So yeah, I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks for being on the show, and I'm hoping we'll have you back with some interesting topics to discuss. And yeah, I'll we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.